Thank you very much. As Jackie mentioned, I'm speaking from an undisclosed location way to the south of Virginia, and I'm on a friend's computer, and I can hear everything fine, but apparently the audio has got a bit of a drag in it. So I'll try to speak slowly and clearly. I'm a fast-talking Yankee, but I'll slow it down. And Jackie, it's a pleasure to be here today with you and members of the Garden Club. And the topic is soil testing and healthy turf. We'll talk about soil testing also in a broader context, whether that's vegetable beds, whether that's a garden bed or turf. You can all understand, you're all gardeners, that soil is where it all starts. Anytime you tune in today to any kind of a YouTube or whatnot, you get a commercial. So I'm going to give you a little commercial up front. Next slide, please. I'm a member of the Fairfax County Master Gardeners Association, and you should know something about it. Actually, there are two in Fairfax County, one countywide and also Green Spring. But our purpose is basically community service. We're a part of the Virginia Ag Extension Service. We're all familiar with the agricultural extension in the rural sense, but also there's a very important suburban aspect to it. We conduct plant clinics. Unfortunately, most of them have been virtual because of COVID. But also, and at the end, we'll give you some references to programs that are on YouTube, on our very, very sophisticated website. It's a real resource. So when you have a gardening plant question, it's a great resource. We have in-person plant clinics at most of the farmers markets, and we hope to get back to that this year. So you can bring in your the sick, lame, and lazy plants, and we can commiserate as to what's causing it to die or shrivel up. We have a help desk where you can inquire on specific things. And as I mentioned, we have this very, very robust website with articles, YouTube programs, and so forth. I'm also a member of something called the Home Turf Program, and we'll get into more detail on that, but that's a subset, and it's aimed at assisting you, the homeowner, to have a healthy lawn, and we'll get into some of the reasons why we do that and what's available. But it's a service, cheap. It's very inexpensive. Here's the Home Turf Program booklet that you received. It's a spiral bound book. Great resource. This was put together in the last year by some of the members of the Home Turf Program, in part because everything has been virtual. If you look down that table of contents, I'm not going to read it to you, but you can see that just about every issue that you could come up with relating to your home turf is in there. And it's just a great resource. So keep that in the drawer so a year from now or 2 years from now, when you have some issue, you can go to that. And also, every one of those topics has appended to it a whole series of links to Virginia tech sources, for example, or countrywide or even worldwide. So it's a starting point. For example, say you have a turf disease problem, page 38. If you go there, you'll find not only information on diseases that are common in Northern Virginia, but you also have a whole series of online resources that you can further investigate. So this is, if you get one thing out of the presentation today. It's take this book, kind of scan it over, and then keep it someplace with your gardening related library, invaluable resource. And I've provided copies of some of the slides that we're going to use, and also copies of the home turf brochure and the Master Gardener brochure and the packet that was distributed. So that ends the commercial. Next slide. Let's talk a bit about soil testing. Why get concerned about it? And you know, the byword is don't guess soil test. Why? Because let's face it, we're all gardeners, and whether you're dealing with turf, trees, shrubs, vegetables, ornamental plants, annuals, perennials, it doesn't matter. It all starts with soil. And we're in Northern Virginia. What do we have? Clay has the fertility of asphalt, let's face it. So just using what you have on almost any home garden, oftentimes after the developer has stripped off any topsoil, rolled out some turf with some sod, you know, it's not going to prosper. So, soil test. Next slide, please. Why do it? Well, first of all, you're going to improve the soil nutritional balance. You're going to know what's there. You're also going to protect the environment. You say, how does that work? Well, in reality, homeowners are major polluters of the bay. They go to Home Depot and they say, oh, they're going to fertilize my lawn. They buy a big pack of some type of fertilizer and they spread it around. And what happens? They over fertilize. Most of it runs off as runoff and gets into the aquifer, into the stream beds, and that's a major contributor to the unhealthy situation we have in Chesapeake Bay. So while the Agricultural Service is trying to help you as a homeowner have healthy turf, they're also a very important side benefit in preventing over-fertilization. It happens all the time. So we prevent runoff, and you're going to save bucks. If you're over fertilizing, you're wasting money, basically throwing it down the drain. And with a soil test, your results are good for 2 to 3 years, whether that's a garden bed or turf area, trees and shrubs, doesn't matter. Knowing where to start. A little bit later, we're going to talk about soil amendment. What you can do to clay to have some chance of survival. Next slide, please. And a little bit on the how to do it. This is kind of procedural. Virginia Tech has a soil testing service that's available to anyone in the county. It's excellent. References are available on the left. Now, the soil test kits are available as noted. Libraries, our own operation, garden centers such as Merrifield, Ace Hardware, they all stock these, and it's free. The kit is free. The kit includes a box to put the soil in, also a form to fill out. We'll talk a little bit about that. And you package that up. If you're doing it as part of the home turf program, we take care of mailing it in. If you do it as an individual, you mail it in. with a check. Very expensive, probably going to bust the budget, $10. You know. Now, if you go to a home, if you go to a landscaping company for the same service, and I own the landscaping company, I charge you a couple $100 to do the same thing. So it's very cost effective whether you use the turf program to do it or whether you do it yourself. Next slide, please. So the process, what you need to do, of course, besides collect the sample, is tell Virginia Tech what you're going to do with that soil area. And you all fill in the name, rank, and shovel number, but you select over here in this purple circle, you select a code as to the intended use of that area, whether it's a turf, different types of turf, whether it's fruit trees or gardens or whatever, acid-loving plants and so forth. So when you get the results back, and we'll talk about that, those results are tailored to your particular requirements. And as I pointed out, it's good for 2 years. Next slide, please. So you have a form, you have a little box with the soil, and you send that off to Virginia Tech. A little bit about the soil sample itself. There's instructions on the back of the form as to how to take it. Very unscientific. You simply go up, take some soil out of the area that you're testing. Instructions are on the back of the form. You dry it out, take out mulch and debris and rocks and so forth, package it in the little box, and send it off. Now, when you get back, next slide, please. This is what you get back. This comes by email. And in the past, with the pure pandemic business, it was very quick, maybe a week to 10 days. It might be a little bit longer now, but it's still a quick turnaround. Now, you get a lot of data because this system is really set up for farmers and large agricultural types. So you get all sorts of, you see here, lab results, and there's all sorts of information. There's two major factors. One is the pH, and we'll talk a little more about that. And the other is the if you're doing turf or a garden bed, you'll get a fertilizer requirement. If you define to you, see down the bottom, fertilizer recommendation, it tells you what type, the type of fertilizer and how much to apply. If lime is required, it will only be in a lawn situation. It will tell you how much lime to apply. So this information is good for a couple of years. So it's a very handy reference. Next slide, please. A little bit about soil pH. It sounds very complex, but it really is not all that. Basically, any plant material grows in a certain range between acid and alkaline. And that's basically from 5.2 to 7, 6, 8 to 7. That's the growth range. If your soil pH, and that's irrespective of turf, the azaleas, or whatever you're growing, is either low or high, and generally in this area it tends to be low on the acid side. Your plants are not going to prosper or even die. And every plant type has an sort of an optimum range of the pH. And based on what you tell Virginia Tech as to what you're growing, they compare that to the pH in the soil that you give this is a sample of the recommendations that you would receive at the top. If it's a line recommendation, it might be none needed, or it might be an explanation of how much to apply over a period of time. In this case, explanation note 1, fertilizer recommendation, use any phosphorus-free turf type for this has to be a turf reply. Turf type fertilizer and tells you type, so forth. 2507, that's the 3 elements. And you can take that information to a garden center or a depot or Lowe's, find the appropriate fertilizer and use it. Also may test for salts. It's not a great problem where we are in both Virginia. So the line recommendation is given to neutralize the soil, basically acid situation, bring your pH up. That's good for a couple of years. But at that time, go back, get another soil test, and spend another $10. Fertilizer recommendation, the same thing, generally good for a couple of years. Next slide, please. So, just to summarize, the soil test, the report will help you assess your need for fertilizer in lime, or if you're doing a garden bed, it will tell you what to do with that. You get a history back from Virginia Tech, basically restating what you told them. The lab results show available nitrogen nutrients, generally not a great concern, unless you're large agro business farmer. And as I mentioned, you get the fertilizer and the lime recommendation. Those are the 2 really important things. It tells you if you need lime or not, if so, how much to apply, and generally on the lime, it'll tell you how many pounds to apply and a frequency. The mistake that people make with lime, as with fertilizer, is over application. Lime, if you just put a lot of lime down, in 3 months, it's gone. So you're much better to have smaller applications over time, like every 3 to 6 months, rather than just dumping a bunch of the stuff on your lawn and probably killing it anyway. Next slide, please. Now, the details on all of this is in that booklet that I pointed out, so it's going to be a handy reference. Let's discuss a bit on the types of grasses and some, if you will, tips for a healthy turf in Northern Virginia. All gardening is local, just like all politics is local. And we are in Northern Virginia. We have not really bad winters, but I guess today is going to be the coldest day in, I think, 20 years or something up there. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not there. But we do have hot summers, 100-degree temperatures, oftentimes for a week, and oftentimes associated with lack of rain. So that's what you're dealing with. Also, we have clay-based soils. You can't change that. You can amend it, and you can make it a little bit better. Generally, when we look at turf in Northern Virginia, we're looking at 2 types of grasses, so-called cool season grasses and hot season. What are they? Well, the cool season grasses are generally what you associate with fescues and so forth. Most, and well, you get bluegrass, you get rye, perennial rye, tall fescue. Tall fescue is really the most common and most prosperous, if you will, cool season turf grass in Northern Virginia. But where did all this idea of lawns start? In Europe, you know, the lawns in England on the estates and all that stuff. Well, guess what? We don't have a British climate in Northern Virginia. These cool season grasses prosper in this temperature range of 60 degrees to 70, 75. Sure as hell don't have that in Northern Virginia, especially when it's 100 degrees. So in the summertime, those cool season grasses are staying alive, but with difficulty. Now, the so-called hot season grasses are Bermuda, St. Augustine, and so forth. And you'll see them a lot, of course, in the south, Florida, Georgia, and so forth. You'll also see them in Northern Virginia. They do stay green in the summer because they are very tolerant of heat. But they die back in the winter and turn brown. So that's the downside. They're also very invasive, like Bermuda. If you get Bermuda in your cool season grasses, they'll just keep spreading and spreading and spreading. And then it looks great in the summer, but then by fall and frost, it'll die back and just turn brown. People actually spray it green with some kind of vegetable dye and try to keep it green in the wintertime. But the main factor, it's invasive. The hot season are very invasive and very, very difficult to get rid of once they're in your lawn area. You almost have to take it out and start over. A little bit about soil preparation. And this really applies whether it's a garden bed or turf or whatever. That's what you're starting with. You're starting generally with clay. And for any type of plant material to prosper in that, you're going to have to amend it. Most cases, developers strip off the topsoil, if there is any. They build new homes. And then they come in, compact the soil by running all kinds of equipment over it. And at the, 2 days before you move in, they roll out the sod, water it, squirt a little liquid fertilizer on it, and man, it looks great. Nice and green and verdant. You've got a great lawn. But that great lawn is sitting on top of clay that's probably compacted. And its ability to put roots into that is extremely limited. Oftentimes, if that sod is put down in late spring or summer, it just doesn't survive. It just literally cooks. And that's it. So, amending soil. Well, first of all, you can top dress turf to help amend the soil. We'll talk a little bit about an annual cycle, but you can simply put a 1/4 inch of very fine composted material, break it into the grass, and do that on a consistent basis, and it will help build up a base of acceptable soil. The compost, of course, puts nutrients into the soil, and it stays there. If you're starting from scratch, you can actually amend the soil. In my home, 30 years ago, I brought in a mixture of 1/3 compost, 1/3 sifted topsoil, and 1/3 banked sand, all mixed together. I put like 6 inches on top, roto-tilled it in the bed, in the turf areas, and even more in the bed areas. That gives what? It gives soil the ability, or the roots the ability, to penetrate the soil, absorb those nutrients, and prosper. So think about the soil first before you go up to the nursery and buy an azalea. But how many times have we done that? You know, you go to the garden center and you see this lovely plant. You buy it, and you bring it home, then you walk around trying to find a place to put it. And it ends up wherever you stick it, but probably in clay. So amending soil is just important, whether you're growing vegetables, whether you're growing shrubs, whatever. Start with the dirt and go from there. A little bit about timing, soil preparation, and so forth. You look at your turf in the spring, and maybe a little whippy, and you think, oh gosh, I've got to do something to improve my lawn. April, May, whatever. You can do some things to help, but that's the wrong time of year to be putting in grass seed or top dressing or aerating. Why? Think of it. Because we're not in England, we're not in New England, we have cool summers. You put out grass seed and do all those things early in the spring, and it comes up. Looks good. But the root structure is not sufficient to survive the heat of the summer. So it'll probably wilt and dry. It's wilting, it looks like it's been cooked. It really has. 100 degrees, it can't survive, even with irrigation sometimes. So what's the solution? What's the best time to think about fixing your lawn in terms of soil and rejuvenating it? That's the fall. Sometimes we can start generally mid-September. If we have, we have long falls here in Virginia. It really doesn't get really cold until early December. And of course, now in January, even up until a few days ago, the ground wasn't frozen. So anything that's in the ground can still be expanding its root system. So in the fall, 3 things to think about. One is to aerate. Second is to top dress. And the third is to reseed. Aeration is simply going around with a machine that cuts plugs out of your turf areas, and those plugs can just lay there because they'll disintegrate into the soil. What does it do? What are those plugs? Basically put holes in the ground. That allows moisture and nutrients to get down to the roots in the soil that may not be very good quality, and it allows the root structures to spread. So that's the first thing, aerate. Top dressing, we can put about a 1/4 inch of well composted soil to spread it around, rake it around, and it will just disappear. The grass will grow right up through it. Over time, you're building up a bed of good soil, and also the nutrients from that compost leach slowly down into the turf and help root production. Last thing is seeding. We can overseed existing lawn during that period, mid-September through October, even into November. You're going to have to keep it wet for probably the first 20, 30 days or so, or at least damp. Putting that 1/4 inch of compost helps to keep the dampness on the ground so the seed properly germinates. But what it's doing is rooting in the fall. Now, at some point, it becomes dormant, about now, or late December. But the point is, in the spring, that switch turns on when it warms up. It's already rooted. It roots further and takes off and has a high probability, especially if you have irrigation, of surviving the heat in the summer. So that's that's really a cycle that's, you can do it yourself, or you can have the lawn service do it. You aerate, you top dress, you seed, a little bit of water will keep it damp if Mother Nature doesn't provide the. You can fertilize also in the fall, starting assuming you have a well-established lawn. Again, moderate amount of fertilizer periodically rather than a lot at one time. Generally, you can fertilize in mid-September, probably in November, with really a small amount. This is where people make the mistake of dumping too much. One, it can kill your grass, and two, it's going to run off. About 3/4 of a pound, which isn't that much, of fertilizer per 1,000 square feet, 2 to 3 times through the fall. All you need. Don't fertilize in the wintertime. One, if the ground is frozen, what's going to happen to that fertilizer? Just runs off. And want basically the plants to rest during the winter and not be active. Weeds are always an issue. If you go through that process of aeration and reseeding and so forth, you'll create a very dense grass cover. And then what does that do? That prevents weeds from germinating. Not 100%, but it really helps control it. Watering and mowing. This is another area where people make a mistake, especially with irrigation systems. And small amounts of water on a frequent basis sounds like it would be the way to go. It's not. Why? Small amounts of water frequently, every 2 days, for example, give them 20 minutes of water or something, promotes shallow root growth. It doesn't force the plant or facilitate the plant getting down, especially in clay that's hard to penetrate. You're much better to have less frequency, but more when you do water. Rule of thumb on watering in our area, where we have 100 degrees sometimes, is 1 inch of water over the whole surface about every 7 to 10 days. So that's a week and a half. One, it's also going to save your water bills. If you ever look at what the summer rate is from Fairfax County water, it's not cheap. But from the plant standpoint, deeper watering promotes deep root growth. A little bit about mowing, whether you're using a yard service or whether you're doing it yourself. Again, don't cut the grass too short. 3 to 4 inches is normal, and as the heat in the summer increases, generally increase the height of the grass. 4 inches in the summer, for example, even higher. And you never cut off more than 1/3 or 1/2 of whatever the height of the grass is. If your grass gets accepted, say you've gone for a few weeks on vacation, you come home and the grass is up 6 or 7 inches. Don't whack it down to 3 inches in one cut. Take a couple of cuts over a period of days and work it down. It's always a discussion, what do you do with the grass clippings? Most mowers bag them up, can bag them up. There are these so-called mulching mowers. You can do either. You can either mulch them up and leave the grass clippings that will put nutrients back in the soil. Much of the nutrients in the grass is actually in the grass weeds. Or you take them out and compost them. For example, I compost a lot of leaves. I've got a forest behind my house, and in a compost, you should have about 1/3 green material as opposed to just dry leaves. So I compost my grass clippings in the compost to facilitate that process. But I could just as well grind them up and leave them in the lawn. Another factor on mowing is the sharp blade. If you look at the grass that's cut off and it's nice and just cleaved off, nice and neat, that means your blade is sharp. If it isn't, it's sort of beating the grass to death. If the grass looks shredded where it's cut, or there's sort of a lot of brown on the sort of shredded top of the grass, it's time to sharpen your blade. Do that, taking the blade off, buying a new one. I simply have a file, flat file, and about 3 times a year, turn the mower over and file the blade, and that works and keeps it sharp. A little bit on weed control. We all have some degree of weed infiltration, whether that's crabgrass, dandelions, or a whole host of other weeds that get in your turf areas. You can control them, as I mentioned, by simply having a very dense lawn. That helps to control things. But you can also use a pre-emergence, especially on crabgrass. And there's other pre-emergents that work on broadleaf plants such as dandelions, clover, and whatnot. The important thing is determine what you're trying to control and read the bags, because your pre-emergence materials are all very specific as to what they control and what they kill. So you've got to be careful, for example, on using some type of pre-emergence where there's a lot of tree roots under your lawn, or you don't want to get them into your beds where you can wipe out your azaleas, rhododendrons, or annuals or whatnot. So read the label. Generally, remember, with any type of pre-emergence or weed control, there is no one shot to final. You're not going to be successful just by putting some pre-emergence out once. Weeds want to survive. Mother Nature is mission. For example, you take crabgrass. One crabgrass plant can produce 1 million seeds. Well, then those seeds are in your lawn. You say, well, look, I'll put a pre-emergence down and it'll kill all the seeds from that last year's crabgrass. It will control some of it, but Mother Nature's pretty smart. Some of these seeds, most of them, will germinate in the first year. But some of those seeds will take 2 to 3 years before they germinate. So you've got to go back year after year after year to really control this sort of thing. So there's no one shot to final. Same way with the deciduous or your broadleafs, dandelions, clover, whatnot. I'll talk a little bit later, I'll show you a chart that talks about the best time to do these various things. But generally, your pre-emergence is in the spring, early spring, because that's when, especially crabgrass and a lot of the broadleaves germinate. That pretty well covers weed control. What's the next slide, please? This is a chart that's in that spiral bound book. And if you don't look at anything else in there, look at this. This is a OneCare Calendar. And every one of these topics on the right-hand side, there's a page or two on it. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but just know it's there. And for example, it says, you know, when you should soil test, but importantly, it says when you should top dress, when you should core aerate, when you should water deeply, and when you should mow and weed control and optional maintenance. It's a very handy one-page guide taking care of your turf. It's page 60 in that spiral bound book. So let's go to the next slide, please. So a little bit of summary. What we've talked about primarily is soil testing in relation to turf areas, but it applies equally to any type of garden bed. It's all soil in preparation for a healthy garden bed, a hardy vegetable bed, trees, shrubs, or turf. And we can't change Mother Nature, and we can't change the fact that we're living in an area with high clay content. And clay is simply very difficult for most plants to root in. So if you look at some considerations, how to maintain a healthy lawn and a healthy bed situation. Why do it? Well, first of all, it looks good. And in the bigger picture, we're concerned about agricultural runoff. You don't think of your garden as an agricultural area, but think of the amount of turf in Fairfax County. And if everybody there is applying too much fertilizer and it's all running down the drain, can you imagine the tons of nutrients that are getting into the water system, into the rivers, and ultimately into the bay? So you're doing good by doing good. You're doing good by having a healthy looking lawn. You're also doing good as far as preventing wholesale promotion, wholesale pollution. With regard to the turf management, you can do it yourself, or you can use a lawn service. And a lot of what we've talked about today should be provided by a lawn service, but hopefully that booklet and the knowledge you have gives you basically the smarts to discuss intelligently with your lawn service what should be done, and also you can evaluate what they're doing and are they doing it right. But it all should start with the soil test, no matter who's doing it, whether you're doing it yourself or whether you're contracting. And as I mentioned, you can soil test yourself, you can contract for it, or you can log on to the website and Ann will give you more information on it, on the Home Turf Program, where a member of the Home Turf Program will come out, look at your property, look at the soil conditions from the soil test aspect, but also look at the type of grass that you have, the weed situation, the drainage situation, and give you a comprehensive report. So don't guess, soil test, get a 3-year plan and start working it. As I mentioned, that booklet is a really excellent, in layman's terms, guide to taking care of your lawn. And the links in there are excellent. Further, we've got this Master Gardener website, and when we start summarizing here, before we go to question and answer, I would like Ann to come on to just to give you a précis of what's available on the Fairfax County Master Gardener website, and also what's available on the ancillary things such as YouTube and whatnot that can be beneficial to you. Over to you, Ann. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, Jackie. This is Ann Mason. I'm the Vice President of Operations for 2022. And so we are in my area, we're in charge of programs. And one of our programs, or many of our programs, as Al spoke about earlier, are really about educating the citizens of Fairfax County about gardening with scientific-based horticultural information. And we distribute that by plant clinics and because we have been in a COVID situation, we have been doing virtual plant clinics, and we have put those on the VCE-Fairfax County YouTube. So you can go search in your browser for VCE-Fairfax County, and you'll come to our YouTube channel. When you come to our YouTube channel, you can see that we have all of the videos in a typical way. We have covered Zone 7 gardening, which covers native plants and things that grow really well in our Zone 7 gardens. We have landscape plants series. We have a Celebrate Trees series. We talk about insects. We talk about vegetables. And we have playlists for each one of these series. For the series that we're talking about now, we have lawn care and weeds. You can see, you can come to the Lunch and Lawn, which is our virtual plant clinic for lawn and turf issues. And if you want to look at that full playlist, you can see all of the playlists associated with lawn. Similar to any of the other playlists if you want to see about our Zone 7 gardening, or about insects, or about weeds, they are readily here at your fingertips for your enjoyment and learning experience. Al mentioned our website, which is fairfaxgardening.org. And when you come, you'll come into the home page. But if you pick up the programs, you can see the information that we have about our plant clinics, our Ready, Set, Grow program, which is with elementary schools and with youth education, home turf, which is our topic of today. We have a diagnostic lab, and if you wanted to submit samples to the diagnostic lab, we have our forms located in that tab, our help desk, and our speakers bureau. So let us look at just at the home turf. There's two things that we want to identify for you today. First is you can sign up, as Al mentioned earlier, we have a home turf in-home assessment. And in March, we will see that you'll be able to come in here and register for our home turf program. The second we wanted to highlight for you is we have a whole set of weed profiles, so that if you are suffering from a particular weed, you can come in here, and I see a little handout that allows you to identify not only what the weed is, its growth cycle. There are some images, as well as some little cartoon, that graphic that shows it in more detail. And importantly, how you might control this by cultural control, biologic control, or chemical control. Note that all of our control activities are scientifically based. We use the Virginia Tech weed guide or the pest management guide for all of our recommendations related to chemical use. me come back just to the lawn care publications and to our reference section. We go to the lawn care publications, that will bring you to a part of our library. Well, this comes to the Virginia Tech Library, where you can get access to all of the related documents for lawns and turf. If you come to our reference library, you will see that we have a variety of references that are easily available to you in categories: critters, garden maintenance, indoor gardening, lawns, perennials, pruning, etc. And you can come and link on any one of these documents. This is the document, the Pest Management Guide, is our Bible for any kind of chemical activity. But you can see that there are a wide variety of materials right at your fingertips. We've tried to compile the most requested topics that we see from our county residents. We have a terrific set of articles that we have in our website, as well as here all of our articles related to every month we have a new set of articles that come in. So this is a great resource for you to look at. With that, I will return it to Jackie, who will continue with our activities. So you can see here's our reference list of our Fairfax County Master Gardeners website that I just showed you, our YouTube list, which has a number of our playlists, including the lunch and lawn and the weed and zone 7 and other sessions. And specifically, since we were talking about soil and lawns today, I'll link to the Virginia Tech. And I'll turn it back to Al and Jackie.
And also, I have to disclose my hidden location, and also apologize for the sound. I'm on a friend's computer. As you can see, this picture was taken when I was taking my walk yesterday morning, and I did not need my snowshoes. It was about 75 degrees, low humidity, and the palm trees look just great. Jackie, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we had a comment and a question.
Okay.
First, Joyce is asking how often you should aerate.
Okay, with regard to aeration, generally once a year, probably in September, is adequate. And as I pointed out, the value of aeration is that you basically drill a hole in the ground, and that allows water and nutrients to get to the roots. It's a little unsightly for a couple of days because you have these plugs that were cut. Leave them there, they'll disintegrate, and the soil and whatnot will just go right into your lawn. So once a year, generally in September.
Does
Thank
that
you.
answer your question, Joyce?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you so much, Al, for joining us.
Jackie, my pleasure, and we can think about gardening. I saw something that today was going to be the coldest day in Northern Virginia in many years, and we can all think about the spring and when things will start to green up. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and Ann, thank you very much. Ann is our social media guru, and she knows how to make that system work for all of us. But you can see there's a host of information And, you know, I'm an old-time teacher, and I realized that you don't remember a hell of a lot after a lecture or a discussion, but it's important to know where to go get information in the future. And that spiral bound book will give you a great source of information as well as the website. So it's something you can use long term, and happy gardening.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for-
much.
Thanks for